Recent studies show that depression and feelings of hopelessness among young people in America has skyrocketed. And it's certainly the case when you look at the trends compared to 2004. So Derek Thompson, one of the writers over at The Atlantic, wrote about this phenomenon. And he also engaged in his own analysis for why he believes that this trend is happening. The title of the piece is Why American Teens Are So Sad, just so you guys can check that out for yourselves if you'd like. But he did, in my opinion, miss the mark in some of these key issues. To talk about this though, we have brought on our associate producer, Kate Bettino. She is from a younger generation than me and Francesca. We're Gen Y, she's from Gen Z. And we wanted to, provide an opportunity to hear her perspective, so it's not just two millennial women sharing our perspective. Now, first, let's take a quick look at the numbers, okay? Let's look at this chart. And to be quite honest with you, you notice this upward trend in depression and feelings of hopelessness among all sorts of demographics. It's particularly high among the LGBT community, and that shouldn't be shocking considering how they've been targeted by right wingers in this country. Same with females, same with white people, black people, and also males. Now, with males, 19.1% in 2004 said that they felt persistently sad or hopeless. And then in 2021, the number jumped to 31.4%. And the numbers are, they just keep going up. For females, it's 33.9% in 2004. And then by 2021, it jumped up to 56.5%. The majority of women in this country feel depressed. Among Black respondents, 27.7% in 2004, and then it's now 39.7%. So you guys get the picture. Now, the most recent data comes from 2001. It's a survey of 8,000 high school students in the first 6 months of 2021. And the study's definition of persistent sadness / hopelessness is defined as follows. If a respondent had ever felt so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row that they stopped doing some of their usual activities. So it's actually getting in the way of being able to function, live their lives and all of that. The most striking data in this graph is the rate of persistent sadness among LGBTQ teenagers. And again, that can be explained partly by what they've been experiencing with all these anti-LGBTQ laws and legislation that's being proposed. And we've got a quick video on that. Let's take a quick look. Our associate producer, Taylor Ellis, put that video together a while ago. It's actually a little bit outdated. There have been more anti-LGBTQ bills since that video was put together. But before I get to the analysis in this Atlantic piece, I wanna open it up to the panel already and get your thoughts. What do you feel is contributing to the significant increase in depression among teenagers? Whoever wants to start.
That goes to Kate, man. That's why we brought her on.
Kate, go ahead.
So I'm not a teen, but I guess I'm the closest to a teen that we could get. And I wanted a sample size that was bigger than myself. So I harassed all my friends to give me answers as to what they thought the contributing factors were. So all of them agreed that social media was, and basically our addiction to social media at this point was a huge factor in mental health. For one, because you just are constantly comparing yourself to everybody else. So you see everyone else's accomplishments. And beyond that, you see people look like they're living their best life, even if they're not. So you feel like you're not happy enough. You feel like you're not fulfilled enough, and you haven't accomplished what everyone else has. So that was a major thing that all of my friends agreed on. Some said money and being in what feels like a hamster wheel of low wage jobs that they'll never be able to get out of, with huge student loan debt that they'll never be able to pay off. So money was another factor. And also just the way that technology has changed, like the way we work now, and feeling like you can never disconnect from your job. Like there's this like illusion that you're always available because you're always online. So I think those were the main things that my friends said.
Slack, baby, Slack, kill it. Don't have Slack on your phone. I just want to respond to that, like, because I feel, I am 38 and I feel depressed when I'm on social media, especially Instagram. I'm a comedian and all I see are other comics, some of whom I love and I want to see succeed, but all I see is their successes and what they did and where they went and what writing job they got. And I'm just constantly comparing. Your comparing mind, which I think is such a soul crusher anyway, is that to like the nth degree. So I've had to like mute people and unfollow and just, I love them, but I can't. But like, I thought, I've known who I was. I think when you're 28 is when you kind of come into like who you are, but it like social media will break you down into pieces. So on top of all the things, like we don't invest in the future. So how do we expect young people to be excited about the future? Like social media, I think is just that little disgusting rotten cherry on top that truly messes with our minds. I can't imagine being younger, 10 years younger, 20 years younger, and dealing with this much in my face.
Oh my God, I totally agree with you on that. You know, social media was just kind of starting to gain momentum when I was in college. So like Facebook became a thing when I was already in college. And I'm so grateful for that because while I have a ton of content that features dumb things I've said online, at least I don't have like a record of what I've engaged in like from high school, you know? And at least I know I'm not gonna be judged based on who I was in high school because like we grow, we change, we mature. And so there's also that component to social media as well. The like human nature of comparing ourselves to our peers, that you're right, that is honestly a dangerous thing to do because you're always gonna feel disappointed and it's all an illusion. Like everyone puts their best face on, sometimes literally for social media, and it's not like reality. But you know, Derek Thompson in his piece did mention social media in his analysis. He writes that social media isn't like rat poison, which is toxic to almost everyone. Wait, can we just is rat poison not toxic to someone? Like, just say that it's toxic to people. Yeah, I don't know. All right, but he also writes that it's more like alcohol, a mildly addictive substance that can enhance social situations, but can also lead to dependency and depression among a minority of users. This is very close to the conclusion reached by none other than Instagram. The company's internal research from 2020 found that while most users had a positive relationship with the app, 1/3 of teen girls said Instagram made them feel worse, even though these girls feel unable to stop themselves from logging on. And like I totally feel that. Like I've gotten past the Instagram thing where I would see these like insanely hot models and I would feel less than, you know, I'd like feel like I wasn't pretty enough or good enough or whatever. But yeah, like it's hard. It's kind of like, I don't know if you went through this at all, Francesca, but in the beginning of my career, I used to read comments and it took a lot of discipline to stop reading them. Now, I am an expert. I'm an expert at ignoring comments and not reading them, but it took a while to like learn how to do that. And then the other thing that I have to bring up is I think Twitter is a completely different animal in the worst way because what you see in Twitter, what really gets amplified on Twitter is human cruelty and it's just nonstop and it beats down on you. And I've kind of stepped away, like not kind of, I've definitely stepped away from Twitter. There are times when I get more active, but I'm the happiest when I'm not on Twitter. When I like decide to spend my free time going for a walk or spending time with family or friends. Do you guys have a similar experience with Twitter, or is it mostly Instagram?
Go ahead, Kate. You take this.
I think that there's still somewhat of like a social contract on Instagram where it's not quite as acceptable to be just like openly vicious, at least for non-famous people. Like people would come after me on Twitter, even though I'm nobody, if I say something that they disagree with politically. But it's a little different, I think, on Instagram. I think Twitter is like a tiny little world that is super toxic to people in the media and political sphere, but among the people that I'm friends with or that I know that have nothing to do with this world, they're almost not influenced by Twitter at all. It's almost completely Instagram for them, and the pictures and following what other people are doing and seeing that other people look so happy. So it's less about like the toxicness of Twitter and just seeing everyone else. Yeah.
It is funny though, because Anna, I do think you're right that like they're both toxic platforms that like feed a very different side of your brain and like make you feel awful for very different reasons. But both are trash. And I'm someone, I feel like Twitter is like a double Dutch jump rope game of like bad opinions and like anger. And I'm like, I don't know where to, I'm not good, like, so I never know like when and what to tweet. And you always get like, I envy people who just treat social media like their diaries, and they're just trying to do whatever. I do, because they're not in their heads about stuff. I tweet something and I'm like, ooh, I should have said this, not that. I should have, I like overthink stuff. It's really dumb. But anyway, I know we're gonna talk about other things. I guess I really like the comparison to alcoholism and addiction. Just because it is not a substance that you put in your body does not mean it is not addictive and harmful, and that taking breaks, diets, not, all that isn't really, really good for you, because that's what it feels like. Like when I'm on brushing my teeth and I can't like get through a minute without like putting something on to watch, that's what like, and I love YouTube. We're on YouTube. I love that stuff, but I'm like, eek. Can I not be alone? Can I not just like have silence?
Yeah, that's definitely my problem. I'm always listening to something or watching something or reading something. And I think that that's like the area where I need to make some personal improvements. But let's go to some of the other. So he also claims like, and I agree with him on this, people are spending less time socializing with their peers, connecting with their peers. I think that's true. Let's get to what, I think is disagreeable in his analysis here, because he mentions, we live in stressful times and we have more access to information than ever before, and that might be skewing people's perception of the world around them. He writes that in the last decade, teenagers have become increasingly stressed by concerns about gun violence, climate change, and the political environment. Increased stress among young people is linked to increasing levels of sadness. Girls more than boys are socialized to internalize distress, meaning that they tend to collapse in on themselves by becoming depressed or anxious. Kate, I'm just gonna go straight to you. What do you think about that excerpt from his piece?
I largely agree with it, except for the insinuation that it's only a perception thing and not an actual real life thing. Like climate change is getting worse. Like there's a reason. It's not just that we're seeing the information, it's that it's actually a real threat now. So we see that, of course. So I disagree that it's only that we have access to the information. But other than that, I largely agree with that point. I think, although the other good thing about our generation is that even though we have worse mental health, we're willing to ask for help more. So yeah, what he said about like women turning inward is, I think, definitely true in the overall trend, but at least now women feel like they don't have to keep it all bottled up. They can seek help from a professional, even if it's not from somebody in their life.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give credit to someone that I did not expect to give credit to in the context of this story, but I really started to see that shift with, I'm just gonna give a specific example, but I don't think this is the first example. I remember remember, that HBO series Girls, Lena Dunham started talking about her mental health issues. And I was grateful for that because I remember around that time I started experiencing anxiety and depression for the first time. And it was still so taboo to talk about. And I felt like finally, like people were given the space and the permission to be candid about what they were experiencing. And that's really the first step in feeling better and getting the help that you need. But more importantly, if enough people are open and honest about it, maybe we can change the system. Maybe we could start taking mental health care as seriously as it deserves to be treated,
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I just think that the gender disparity is like really ringing in my ears. Like girls being twice as likely to suffer depression and to have depressed feelings as boys. Boys seem to be the lowest group. I mean, then you have, blacks are higher than like LGBTQ plus or like the highest, which of course, but like, I just have to say like, I think there's a reason that Greta Thunberg is a girl. I just like I really feel like it makes sense that she's a girl. I do think girls tend to mature and get a little bit more grown up earlier. And also I love Greta and I'm very identified with her. When I was around 11 or 12, that point in your life where you realize bad things happen and adults aren't doing F all to stop it.
Yes.
Like, I think kids feel that, and Kate, you tell me if I'm wrong. I think kids feel that so much more these days, acutely. It's not just, I'm like my librarian was like a weird pedo, and you're like, oh my God, what? Like, thank God didn't like do anything to me, but like, other kids was like, what? Or a car crash happens, and you're like, oh my God, people die. Now it's climate change, no one's doing anything. Mass shooters in my own school, no one's doing anything. And just that realization that life is so beautiful, but adults are effing it up so badly and letting these things happen. It's like I don't know, there's a part of you that just kind of dies and gets really angry outwardly like Greta or internally. I mean, Greta didn't speak for like a year before she started getting active, right? She was like, she didn't eat, she didn't talk, like all that stuff. So anyway, I didn't mean to bring her up, but I love to anyway.
I think that I honestly, this is my perspective. I think that's the most important point because there's all sorts of things happening in society that we need to reform and change. But I think, listen, if you are growing up in an era where it's made abundantly clear that the biggest threats to your life, to your safety, to your happiness, to your prosperity are just allowing to stand with absolutely no action, like it gives you this feeling of dread, right? Like, okay, well, why am I gonna work hard? Like, why am I gonna get like an education if I'm gonna dig myself into a massive hole and feel like an indentured servant for the rest of my life? Like that feeling of hopelessness makes sense when you don't have leaders doing the right thing to make society better. And so let's end on that point. Kate, final thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's so clear to my generation how like working hard and being passionate about something isn't enough to succeed in this world. Like I went to college with so many, like mediocre people who had parents that were legacy, that had big Wall Street jobs. Their kids got into college because of that. They got a job on Wall Street because of that. And now they're making $200,000 a year. Like it's so clear to us now that working hard and doing all the things that our parents told us to do isn't gonna be enough.
You know what? That was the realization that led to my bout with depression, right? Like the realization that like meritocracy is a myth in America. And that's like a hard pill to swallow when you think about the sacrifices that you were persuaded into making in order to be successful. And then you're like, wait a minute. Like, you see people who are connected. You see, you're right, the legacy admissions and some of these Ivy Leagues. And it's like, oh wait, it's not really about meritocracy. It's all about connections. It's about old money looking out for, their offspring, and that's it. And it's about a system that's like specifically rigged in favor of people who are already incredibly privileged. So it all really starts to make sense when you take a step back and you look at the system overall.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.